A very special demo that has been requested by none other than V. And I've been kind of pushing it down the line, but here we are. And hopefully enough of you guys have had a chance to actually try it so that it's not just like me doing my work, doing your work for you. Yeah, let's see if this is all it's cracked up to be, right? All right, so all we need to do here, it's quite simple in terms of like what's actually going to be on the screen, right? We've got a couple different things. We've got a list of to-dos, and each item is either going to be crossed out, or it's kind of hard to see, or not crossed out. So if it's done, we'll cross it out, right? Then we'll have a little delete button here so that we can delete individual items. And then we're going to have a little form here that will allow us to add new items to the list. So not too bad, right? What I thought we would do is we would create this thing as a single component, and then once we've got that working the way that we want to, then we can kind of refactor it and break it down to maybe a couple subcomponents. Sound pretty good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's start a new project here. So I'll do my npx create react app to-dos. Okay. As you know, this might take a minute or two. And then while we're waiting for that to happen, we can kind of think to ourselves, how many bits of state might we be storing here in this component?
How many bits? Like you mean how many key value pairs?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean like bits in a computer, but yeah, like how many pieces of state are we looking at? I heard 2 over there. That's a good idea. So what are the 2 things?
Completed and not completed.
That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking we would simply have a piece of state that held all of our items, and then we would also have a piece of state that's just saying whatever is in this form at any given time, right?
Okay.
All right. So let's go with that. I'm going to go back to my terminal here, and we're all good to go. So we'll say code to-dos. Okay, we've got our project up here. Let's get it running. So I'll come down here and do my npm start. All right, and then we'll open up our source folder. And let's just create our components folder, right? Whoa. And then inside the components folder, let's just create this little to-dos component. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is import everything we need. We know we want React. We know that we're going to have some state inside here, right? So I'm going to import my useState hook. Okay. Let me just minimize that down there. And then we're going to export a default function. Okay. Now here's where we're actually going to use that useState hook. So we want to keep track of a couple things, the to-dos list, and then whatever's in that form input. So let's create those guys. So we'll say const to-do, or wait, let's just call it list set list. Okay, and we're going to set that equal to the result of invoking useState against, what do you guys think? What's my list originally going to look like? It's going to be an empty array, so let's pass that in over here. All right. So that's my initial state. And then the other piece of state that we talked about is going to be that form input. So I'm going to say const input set input equals useState. And what should I pass that?
No.
What's the input going to be initially?
No.
Empty string, there it is, right? We just want it to be an empty string. All right, very good. And down here, this is where we're going to have our return part, right? So we'll have return, and then I'll put maybe a div inside here, because we like divs. And then the first thing that I want to have up here is the form above or below? I can't remember.
I don't think it would matter. I think it'd be best if it's above, that way the list goes down.
Yeah, it does seem like it would. Sorry. Yeah, let's do it that way. Let's.
Can you do Control Plus?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
very difficult to see the screen.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, certain colors don't translate well on this in this projector.
Let's check out the light.
Yeah, let's lower it a bit. Or you want to shut it off entirely?
Complete darkness.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
Alright.
yes.
Is that better?
Same.
Man, we just can't win, can we?
There we can't see it. And we can
All right, so let's just pretend like the form itself was going to be up above, because I like that idea too. So let's just put up here form. Okay, and then inside this form, I'm going to have this input, right? And then I'm also going to have a button down here. I think it says add or something like that. All right, and then the input is going to have a couple different things. I want to specify what the value is. What should I set that equal to?
The standard
Input.
input.
Input, right? We have something where we're storing this information right now. Okay. Good. And then the other thing that I'm going to want to have is some kind of an on-change handler, right? So if I go on change, this is going to need to be some sort of a callback function. Do you guys know what on change takes in? The on change handler? What's the argument that our function needs to take in?
Event.
Event. There we go. Good. So we can call it event, and then over here, what are we going to call? We're going to call set input, right? So that we can keep the input in sync with whatever was just typed in there. So let's say set input, and then where am I going to get that value? I have event right now. Where can I get the value from that?
Oh,
No.
the input.
Close.
All of that.
Event.target.value. Right? We have to go one more level in. Okay, so what is the target anyway? What does that even mean? What's event.target?
It's the name of
The element itself.
It's the element itself that caused this event, which in this case is the input, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm just grabbing the value of the input, and I'm now updating this piece of state up here, right? Okay? So that should allow us to keep it nice and in sync every time a user makes some change to that input. Okay. Then, so let's get this guy rendering first. So I'm going to save this, and then over in my app.js, let's import this component so that we can use it. So import to-dos from components to-dos. Okay, and then I'll just rip out all of this good create React app stuff. To-dos. Okay, and let's see if we have this rendering on screen. Yeah, it looks pretty nice, huh? Okay, cool. There it is. I was on the edge of my seat waiting for that. All right. Cool. So we're back here. So what we're going to want to do is when this form is submitted, I need to add a to-do to my list, right? So let's create a function for this. We'll just say handle submit. Okay, that's going to take in some event. Now, what am I going to want to do inside the body of this function? The form by itself would normally do what?
Post.
If I don't make some special change in my JavaScript, how's that form submission going to be
get.
It's going to make a GET request to the exact same page that I'm on. Okay? So we could demonstrate that too if we just submit the form. So if I go back here and I go sum to do, okay? You see how it's made that, it did make a GET request. Now there's nothing up in there because I didn't actually name that input. If I name the input, we would actually see it up there. So I could say name equals text, I don't know, let's call it text, refresh, some text, and here now you can see that we've actually made a GET request to this same exact page, right? All right, so how do I prevent that from happening? Because I don't want this type of behavior.
Prevent default.
This is where our prevent default will come into play, right? So we're going to say event.prevent default to prevent it from submitting the normal way. And then I'm going to add a little submit handler here to the form. So we'll say on submit handle submit. Okay, and then we'll just console.log in here, input, just to make sure that we have access to that. So if I refresh, whoops, I'm going to refresh the page, open up my console, and just make sure that everything's working right. So I'll say some text, okay? And it is in fact telling us what we have in that input, so everything's good, right? Now what I want to do, since I've submitted this, is I want to add it to my list of to-dos. Okay, so we'll just comment that out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say set list. Now I'm going to use some JavaScript magic here, and I'm going to spread across whatever the current list is. Okay? Whatever's currently in there, I want those items in my new array. And then I'm going to add a brand new item. Okay? So my new item will have a couple properties. It will have text. So we'll say that's the actual text of the to-do. And where am I going to get that from?
Your
Input, right? And then we'll say completed false. So by default, we're saying this item has not been completed. Okay, very good. So down here, underneath where I had my form, I want to actually display all of my actual to-dos. So how am I going to do that?
do a return.
Well, I already have a return up here, yeah, so I'm good there. I'm going to use map, right? So I'm going to map through my items. So I can go like this. Oh, I called them list. I want to change this. I hope you guys don't mind. Items, set items, set items. Okay, and then this is the last one. Okay. So we're going to do items.map. And then each item is going to give me a couple things. It's going to give me the item itself and then also the index.
Out of curiosity, what's the difference between using map and
Yes, there is, because all for each does is it runs a function on every single item in our array. Is that actually going to output something? No. So that's why we need to use map. Okay. So inside here, we'll just create another little div, I guess. Yeah. The reason I don't want to fragment it is because I want these guys stacking on top of one another, right? So div will give me that display block behavior. Okay, and then inside there, I'm going to want the actual text, right? So we'll say item dot text. And then I'm going to use this index here as a key, because if I don't use a key, we know React will get mad about that, right? Okay.
Put an I.
Sure did. Sorry about that. Okay. So let's try adding some item or whatever. Some item. Okay. Some other item. Okay. I don't really like the fact that the input has not emptied out every time I add something, so we can change that, right? How would I go about doing that? So inside this handle submit, let's just set input to be a blank string. Okay, so now when I add an item, some item, cool, some other item. All right, that's looking pretty good, right? Cool. Probably the next thing that we will want to handle, actually, any questions before we do anything else? Let me stop and take a breather here and make sure we know what's going on. Are you guys feeling pretty good about this code, or is there anything you want to clarify?
For the set item, I'm trying to figure out like how does that.
Set items right here?
I'm gonna set input, right? How it updates the UI.
Because the UI is just us kind of declaring how we want things to look at any given point in time, right? So as long as that input, this value is reflecting whatever that input is, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Could you scroll back there?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about this real quick. Nick, tell me what's going on line 10.
Is that not good?
It's a function, yes.
That's
So what are we doing? I mean, we know this is a function. What are we doing with it? I see some parentheses over there. What does that mean?
Broken.
We're calling it, right? We're calling that function. What are we passing to it? We're passing an array, right? That's what these square brackets mean. It means we're specifying some new array. And what is this dot 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 items? What's happening there?
I literally looked at that like an hour ago. I'm forgetting it.
Oh, rest spread. Okay, cool. Little help for Nick on line 11.
It's a spread.
Spread.
Takes individual items and takes them into one array.
Yeah, so it's sort of like we're iterating through all these existing items and we're adding them to the new array that we're making right here. Okay. All right, good. And then line 12, what's this thing right here?
That's taking in from the input element, whatever we're typing.
Changing the
Okay, yeah, I heard object over here. That's what this is, right? This is a literal object right here.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple key value pairs. So we've got a key of text. We're setting that equal to whatever the state of the input is at that time, right? And then we're saying we want the completed to be set to false initially. Hasn't been done yet. All right. You guys all feel pretty good about this guy? Sets.
Yeah, I guess for this one, I'm a little confused on how you fetch that object anymore.
How we can do what?
Oh, fetch that object. Like, using a set inputs, which redefines the array. And so we've added like an object into it.
Wait, set items or set
Set
input?
items, yeah.
Set
Right.
items. Okay.
Right. So we have set items in which the reason why we're doing the spread operators, it's like the equivalent of plus equals, because what the set my understanding is the set items, it'll redefine the items again, but you want to change the previous value set within it, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like if we had taken a slice of the existing array
Right.
and then pushed something to the end of it and then called the set items against that result, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess like I'm still. Well, it'll be later down the line when we're trying to do something with text.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so that's not the only way that you guys could have done this. That's a way. Okay. All right, so we're all good there. Now the other thing that we want to display down here is going to be some kind of a checkbox, right? Saying whether this thing has been done or not. All right, let's see how we can do that. So let's add that over here after the item text. So I'm going to add an input type equals checkbox. Okay. And then we're going to have a checked attribute. So where am I going to get that from? I'm going to take it from the actual item, right? Whether or not that item was completed. So let's say item.completed. So if it was completed, then the checkbox should be checked. Does that mostly make sense? Yeah, it's Boolean, right? Okay, cool. And then we want to, I can do an on-click handler, right? So if I click on that checkbox, then what am I going to want to do? Well, I'm going to want to toggle the completed attribute of this object, right? So let's create a function. Function toggle completed. Okay. Now my actually, what we're going to do is this toggle completed is just going to take in an index. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I need to change only that specific item. So how can I go about setting our list and having our list update here? I'm still going to call the set items function. Okay. I want everything in front of that list to stay exactly the way that it is. So I'm going to say items dot slice, and I'm going to go from 0 to that index. And then I'm going to create, actually hold on one second. And then everything after this object I want to stay the same as well, right? I don't want anything to change there. So we'll say items dot slice, and where am I going to go from? Index plus 1, right? So it's like I want all that stuff after to stay the same, and I want everything before also to stay the same. Okay. And what about the item that I'm trying to change? This is kind of tricky. So let's just do this. Let's grab a reference to it. So I can say const item equals items at index, right? Why can't I say item dot index? Does anybody know?
Because it's not.
Or I'm sorry, items dot index. Why can't I say that? So an array, this array items, does not have a property called index, right?
Yeah.
But index is an actual variable, so this is going to be calculated, some calculated integer, right? Okay. So I've got a reference to my item, and then I'm going to toggle the completed. So I can say item dot completed equals the opposite of item dot completed. Does that make sense to you guys? I just reversed it. So if I negate it, if it was false initially and I negate it, it's going to turn true. Or if it was true and I negated it, now it's going to be false, right?
So I guess the exclamation is an operator as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just negating it. Right.
Can you scroll up for the initial declaration for item? Or is that, yeah.
For items, yeah, up in there.
So I guess that's the part I'm a little confused on.
Okay.
So for the use state, when you're using an array instead of an object, so that's just setting an array of objects? Is that what
Well,
that
right
is?
now it's just an empty array. There's nothing in it.
Right.
But yeah, it's the thing that I'm going to be adding things to, throughout the life of this component. It's just an array.
I guess like then in the set items, then how is it that you're adding these attributes to the item based on that syntax? For starting from line 10.
Starting from line 10, how am I
Set
adding?
items, right? So now that we have like the set items
Okay.
function that modifies our items.
Yeah.
Whatever items is supposed to be. And we're saying we're passing in an array that its first.
So we're
element-
creating a brand new array, right?
Right.
Right. Okay.
And then the first elements of this array is items.
So that's going to be everything that's currently in my items list.
Right. And then now you have at the last element of that array is an object.
Right.
With attribute text.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. And then now when we go back down into our map operator,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. Our map
Down here, line 45.
right? And
Yeah.
so what that is we're taking out items, sure, right?
Right.
And running a map function,
Right.
in which we're saying each element inside that items, so right now it's an array, is an item, right? And then the I is the current position of that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's just the index.
You put in the key, but this is like that part confusing. How are we able to do an item dot text?
Because each item is going to be an object, right? And the object is going to have the text property, and it's also going to have the completed property.
Right. But that's why, because it goes like if an item is every element inside your items map, or in your items object, right?
Okay.
Within the set, inside the set items, I thought we're just appending an object with a value of text and complete at the end of that array. So for this to work, that means the interpretation of the initial set items is we're adding the object properties of completed and text to each and every single element of that array.
And we are, but the only thing is, I think maybe what the confusion is that initially we have an empty array, so then the thought is, well, how are we able to iterate through an empty array? We never really even get into this
Right. Yeah, no,
iteration
you're
because
right.
it's empty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Because if it's empty, that means everything being added to it has text. And
Right. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So here we were working on this this completed toggle here. So what I can do is I can pass the item back in here, right? We could talk about later how to do it a different way, but I just want to do it in a way that kind of makes the most sense for you guys. You guys feel pretty much okay with this?
Yeah.
I'm grabbing all the items that came in front of the one that I'm interested in. After I've toggled it, I'm just dropping it back into its place, and then I'm grabbing all the items that came after it.
And you want to do this order because you want to maintain the index.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Explain again about 122.
I could also do this whole thing in a map function. I don't know if maybe that. Line 22? You mean why we didn't use a dot here? Items dot index? Okay, so the reason why is items is an array, right? And an array doesn't have a property called index.
So you're grabbing like the first item. Oh wait, that's not.
No, I'm grabbing an item at a specific index.
Oh right, of course. Items at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've got that done, let's actually see how we can incorporate this down here. So if we come down here into our onClick, I'm going to create a little function here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say toggle completed. What am I going to pass into that? It's telling me I need an index, right? Well, I have that here, right? I have this I. Curly brace? Yeah, so since we're inside these curly braces, we've just defined this little callback function, right? What would normally go inside here that I've skipped? Events. right? It's the actual event, but we don't really need to do anything with the event, so I've left it out in this case. Yeah. So there's that. So let's take a look at something here. I want to save this and then go back to our, here, let's add some to-dos. Some to-do. Did I not give it an oh. I guess I'm supposed to make this an on-change handler. My mistake. Alright, some to-do. Another to-do. Okay, and then what I wanted to show you guys was actually an extension here that you guys can install in your browser. It's called React DevTools. Okay? So if you look, once you have this extension installed, you can click on this little components thing here, and it will show you what components you have in your app right now. So if I click on Anonymous, which apparently is my to-do list, you see how it's giving me all the state of everything in here? Okay, so if I click that guy, it's actually telling me the state of these different to-dos. Yawn. But this is actually pretty cool because it'll allow you guys to keep good track of what's going on in your application, right? So if I have any doubts about something, like, well, I thought I just changed that, this should tell me if I did or not. So both of these guys are not completed. What happens if I click on one of them? Whoa, it just changed to true. Did you guys see that? And if I click on the other one, there, that one changed to true as well. Cool. So that's working exactly as we expect it to. How can we apply a line through when the thing's done? Through some sort of styling, right? So I can come up here. I can drop this in a span tag or something like that. Let me drag this over here. And I could say something like style equals, it's got to be an object. And then I could say text decoration. Okay, so here maybe we could use a ternary operator, right? You guys like that? So item dot completed. So if it's true that the item is completed, what do I want the text decoration to be? None. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, what am I saying? Sorry. I've lost my mind. Otherwise, I want it to be none, right? Okay. Let's try this. Sorry about that. Item, other item, and then that worked really well. Text decoration, none? What?
I think the first is false and the second is true. I think you have to reverse it. You gotta go none and then strike through.
Yeah, but completed is true, that we try to do it should be there.
First is false and the last
Oh, wait, I think I see what it is. Sorry. Wait, these states are correct, though, right? Completed, true. That one's completed, false. Huh.
I had a line through. That's the other two.
Oh, shoot. Yes. Sorry about that. All right. Some item. Oh, much better. Man, where would I be without you guys? Darn CSS. It strikes again. Yeah, you're not the only one. Man, what a pain. All right. We changed it from strike through to line through.
Oh my god.
Yeah, oh my glob is right. Cool, so that's working the way that we expect it to. The only other thing that we need to add is that delete button, right? All right, so let's see how we can do that. So after our text and after our checkbox here, let's just create a little button. Delete.
Also for JSX, so
Oops.
on line 50, that line is. What's that? I'm trying to find out what it is. Oh, where's the closing bracket for 43?
So for the 43 closing is down on 54.
Right. Okay. So toggle completed is aware of I because it's inside.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out. Okay, that makes sense.
That's a really important point, actually, too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because in a lot of cases, we're able to just pass in a callback that we defined somewhere else, right?
Right. Yeah.
But in this case, I want to know what the index is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's create this little delete button, and then what I want to do is I want to handle that delete somehow as well, right? So I can have a function handle delete, and that's going to take in an index, at least I want it to. Okay. And then I'm going to set items again. I'm going to pass in a brand new array, and we'll do something very similar to what happened up on line 27, right? Is I'm gonna pass in everything that's there up until the index, and then actually I changed my mind. I want to do it differently. Sorry. Let's do it this way. We're gonna take our items, and we're gonna invoke a filter on them. Okay. So my filter function is going to take in a callback function. Okay, and that callback function will have access to some item and the index. And then I want to keep that item if the index does not equal the index that I just took in there. Since I don't need this item at all, I could just do like an underscore or something like that. Okay? So what this is saying is that when I call this function with an index, I'm going to filter through my existing items and only keep the ones that do not have an index that matches that. Okay, which will be everything but one item, right? All right. And then we're going to call set items against that resulting array. What does filter return us? The existing array or a new array? A new array, very good. You guys were really listening. That's cool. I appreciate that. No, you never know, like if people are picking up on that kind of stuff. But
this lesson job was like very passive. It was like, oh, you guys actually think shit. Thank you so much.
you got to do it subtly, right? All right. Cool. So down here, we're going to have a little click handler. Okay. And again, I'm going to create one of these little inline callbacks. And I'm going to say handle delete. And I'm going to pass in that index again, right? Okay, so let's see if we can make this work. If we create some to do, another to do, a third to do, and then let's delete this guy. There we go, right? Boom. Okay, so let's just review this real quick. In fact, I'm going to break it out to make it a little bit clearer. So we'll say const new items, and then I'll set that equal to invoking this filter function right here. Okay, so that's again going to create a new array. And then let's make sure that we can read through this again. Okay, Andrew, what's happening here on the items.filter? What's going on?
We'll filter all of the items that we got from the input, which is by form submissions, and then.
So it's whatever our current items list looks like, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we only care about the index on in this case, and we're passing the index that we got into a callback functions, and then we'll check if the index, which is from the item, which is from the item filters, if it's equal to this index it was from.
So the return means we're trying to return a true or false from our filter callback, okay? So this is going to give us a Boolean, right? It's going to say true if that I is exactly the same as the index that came in there, right? If it returns false, then that means that, you know, it wasn't the index that we were trying to get rid of, which means we can keep it.
I'm a bit confused about the booleans
Sure.
in this part.
So if these two guys are equal, do we want to keep the item? No. So, which means that we would be returning false in that case, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If we return true, that means we're actually trying to keep that item in the new array that we're creating. Okay. So we return true if these two things are not equal, and that means let's keep that item.
I was wondering why there were so many abbreviations for like functions to error functions, promises to replace callbacks, and then I realized it's because JavaScript is requiring more time investment into the syntax because it can get so complex.
Right.
Like it's required more investment to understanding it than any other.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that
Yeah, I mean there are like functions on functions on functions, but we can even rip out this if we want to get even more explicit, right? I can take this function right here, and I can say const item filter equals this function right here, right? And then I can pass that in here if we really want to break stuff out a little bit more. And this would still work the same way. Now let me ask you this. Could I rip this item filter out and sort of like put it somewhere else entirely in my code, like up above my component? Would that still work?
No.
No, why not?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because if I took it out of this context, I no longer have reference to this index variable. So that wouldn't work. Good. So now that we've got this thing working, do you guys want me to sort of break it down into subcomponents or anything like that? All right. So let's see what we can do. We've got a to-dos component. Do we want to have a to-do component? Okay. And our to-do component, let's say, is not really even going to store any state, right? It's just going to be a quote presentational component. We'll just show some stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to export some default function. And then here, let's go and grab all of the code that we were mapping through down in this guy, right? Let's take this. Okay. Okay. And then what am I going to want my props to be on this? We could probably make it something like text or completed, right? And then maybe I also want the index. Maybe. Yeah, let me just hold on. There, a little more readable. Oh, Command D. Yeah, just to highlight multiple occurrences of the same thing. So inside here, instead of item.completed, I can just change this. I can take off the items everywhere, right? That should work. Okay. And then instead of I, let's say index. And also, one other thing is I'm going to need to take in these functions, right? Because I don't have access to those right here. So let's...
The key as well.
Oh, the key? I was going to actually take that out entirely. because now I'm going to have the key being, on the other component where it was already. All right. So here I need to take in these functions because I don't have access to toggle completed or handle delete, right? Toggle, okay. Okay, anything else I need to do here? Let's see. What the heck?
You can use a button. Button tag.
What did I just do? Oh, this is kind of what I meant to do, but okay, cool. So now I want to import this to-do component from inside my to-dos, right? So we'll say import to-do from the same level to-do. Okay, and then if I come down here in our map, let's go like this, to-do. And then my index is going to be set to what? I, right? My key is also going to be I. My text is going to be what? Item.text, right? Completed is going to be what? Item.completed. What else did I need to pass down again? The functions, right? So handle delete equals handle delete. Toggle completed equals toggle completed.
Also, is the functions being an object a really JavaScript thing?
That in the sense that a function is like a first-class citizen, it can be passed around like anything else. It's not specific to JavaScript, but it is kind of often referenced. Like there are other functional programming languages that take that similar approach. All right, so let's test this out and see if this is still working the way that we expect it to. Let's go back here, add some to-dos. Another one. Okay, I can still delete. I can still toggle completed, so it's all working just fine. So I heard a big sigh. Somebody not liking this so much?
No, I just want to like. So you called it to do inside the
Inside my mapping function?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the key and the index and text. So you're just like calling it for those.
So these are what? Props. Those are props now that my to-do subcomponent are getting. Key is just to make React happy. Because React will get mad if you map through items and you don't give it a unique key. Because I didn't want to use the item text because what if I had two to-dos that had the exact same text? Then it wouldn't like that so much.
It's just one of those things where it's like, because that key actually gets rendered in HTML, right? Versus like the index, text completed,
Yeah.
etc. That's actually just part of the props and just stored in the background.
Yeah, so if we look at the HTML, let's go back here. I've got another one here. You can see there actually is no key attribute there, right? It's not really an HTML attribute. It's just something that React is using internally to keep track of that specific item.
Okay.
Anyway, it looks like it's kind of late, so I don't necessarily want to create another subcomponent from the form, but I will do it if you guys want me to. Show of hands on that.
I mean, what's up?
You want it? Oh, some people do want it. All right.
I just want to see.
You just want to see it. All right.
It is.
Okay, another subcomponent coming up. So let's create form.
It's just good seeing someone else do it because when I do it, it just yells at me.
Right.
Right?
Okay. So let's grab the code that we have here from our to-dos, right? Grab this little form, copy that, and then we'll just drop this in here. And then I'm going to ask myself, what do I need access to? Well, a couple things, right? I need access to the input value. I also need access to this handle submit function. And I also need access to this set input. So let's take those guys in. So up here we'll say input handle submit and then set input. Quick question though. What? Well, no. Event is something that I don't.
Oh, right.
Because that's just part of my callback function. But quick question. Does it really matter where we store the state as far as this form goes? Does the state have to be stored up above where it is right now? Yeah. Does to-dos need to know what the state of that is? Not really. I could actually store the state down here if I wanted to, and still have this thing function in the same way. Because the larger component, the parent component, doesn't care what the state of the current input is, right? But we'll just leave it the way that it is for now. So
I just want that to be faster though, is in the sense that when you're redefining a state, it's that state for a particular to-do rather than a list of to-dos.
well, the only thing is just that input value, right? So I would argue that the state could probably be housed in here, but I just don't really think there's any sense in us refactoring that at this point. I think this will be fine as a refactor, right? So we'll take in those things that we need.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In this, do you need like context to do this, or?
No, I haven't even touched context yet.
Yeah, right. So
You
you
can though,
Can you?
obviously.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, you
basically
can.
why it's for.
Well, context is more like if I'm gonna, it's trying to combat a problem known as prop drill. Okay? Like when I'm just sending a prop down to one component, that's then gonna send that same prop down to another subcomponent.
Right.
And on down the line. Here, I'm not really doing that. I'm only sending props down one level. So context, it does not really gonna solve anything for me here. I could use it, but I don't really have prop drilling going on, right? So
I guess just want you to understand that, like, like how we're sending these functions to be able to modify a property of the parent entity.
right.
And so if we're having components embedded component, that first component, or the next level component, like the to-do, if there's other embedded components, I would have to set those functions again.
Right, you'd have to just keep passing them down to the subcomponents.
Right, so I'm just having it as part of the context. I don't know if
Right.
pass it down, you can just.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's the kind of problem that context was set up to combat.
That makes sense.
All right. So let's save this form, and then we'll go back into our to-dos component here, and let's import it. Import form from dot form. Okay. And then down here, instead of this entire form, I should just be able to use my new form component that I just created. And then the things that this needs to have are the input, right? Handle change. Wait. Oh, we didn't even have that. So we're going to say handle change is going to be some E, and then we're going to do set input against e.target.value, right? Wait, did I need that? No, all I need to pass down is set input, right? What am I talking about? Okay. Okay, and then what?
It's not defined.
And then I need to pass down my handle submit too. All right. Let's make sure this is still working. What happened? I thought I was spelling that wrong. Okay. God dang it. Something else. Okay. All right. So the refactor is working just fine, right? And I've got this form, and I've got my my to-do subcomponent. So that's all working good. Really, the usefulness of this would be like if somewhere else on my app I needed to display some to-dos, right? If the only place that I'm using them is inside this component, it's a little bit of a toss-up whether I want to abstract that to another component. If the component feels like it's getting too large and there's just way too much stuff going on, then yeah, you probably want to have a subcomponent. But part of the reason why I wanted to show you creating a subcomponent is because this is sort of a large part of the usefulness of React, is being able to create these types of things and then reusing them in different spots. Okay. Any questions before I let you guys go? Yes.
Like, from what I understand that is, React is provide you a some sort of language that you can just plug in different components to let the user view different content.
Mm-hmm.
When you project that bigger and bigger, you will sort of get the kind of like a pyramid level schemas, right? So
It's like callback hell.
yeah, we can develop
Potentially.
a React project. Where do we start? We start from the very bottom of the pyramid or very top. So that's the thing that we can do when I do a thing such as this. We can have like multiple components. So where to start? There's not a logical entry I can find to do this.
I would say if you're doing a project that has some routing, probably start with that. Start with your routing and just kind of like get out some different routes going on. And those routes don't even have to return anything really involved initially. You could just like have something outputting, this is such and such route, right? Or this is some other such route. And then you could kind of break it down further from there. Once we actually get some route rendering the way we want to, then we can create some smaller components that we want to go inside that.
Okay, so are you saying that we can, let's say, do some few routes, and each route is just a blank page saying that this is a route for that, this is a route for this, right?
Yeah.
So then we can
Like placeholders,
placeholders,
you know.
and then
Yeah.
the components for each route, and keep going on, and along the way we might reuse some of the components from the previous route.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? So
Yeah, so if you find yourself kind of noticing that pattern, like, wait a minute, I already built this component somewhere else, then maybe it's time to make a separate component that you can reuse in both places. It would be the same thing with a JavaScript function. If you had a function written in some component over here, and this other component over here needs to use the exact same function, do you want to rewrite it? No, that would be sucky, right? Let's just have one master copy of this function and then have each one of those guys imported.
And then for another question I think is that when you do this to-do list,
Yeah.
You did all code in one component first, and you further divide it into different parts. So when we do it like how do we know where to divide? To make a big component like small pieces.
You'll just kind of want to think to yourself, like, are these two things functionally separate? Can they sort of exist on their own? Like, obviously, that form could potentially exist on its own, and the list of items could exist on its own, arguably, right? So that's kind of how you want, when you're looking at an app, how could I potentially divide these things? Sometimes the visual gives you a pretty good clue, too. Yeah.
The way I did it, so I had 3 components as well. So one is for the to-do, the other is for the to-do form, and another component is a wrapper, and include both the.
Well, that's exactly what I did, right? Because the to-dos is the wrapper, and then I've got my form and my to-do. Exactly the same. Yeah. So it sounds like you're thinking about it in a pretty good way, I think.
Because like pretty much to his point, like after like looking at some of this, like a part of me like wants to like build out a diagram, put some logical models out there of how you want to do these things. Because it's one big giant tree structure, in which you take like some abstract thing, and then you're organizing it. And it was pretty cool, but it's interesting because I guess like starting off with like the intro to JavaScript, where it was just a lot of like property presentation, and definition, and you come to this, and it really is this very structured thing which can make really complex. And awesome.
Yeah, and that's why I thought it would be kind of nice to just build it as one thing initially. Yeah. Make sure that we get it working, and then we can break it out into smaller pieces if we want to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that because it's a freaking rabbit hole when you try to like do it like a design first with not even knowing how to design in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Thanks, guys. I'll stop this.